Faster than a speeding bullet.
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
More powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus. Resilient. Highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Betterhumanology podcast. My name is Jerred Moon, and with me is Talon Schwam. What's up, Talon?
What's up, everyone?
And this is, like I said, the Betterhumanology podcast, where every week we are trying to become better humans, whether we're tackling an endurance event, strength training, fitness-related, or mentally related, psychologically, making ourselves better in any way, shape, or form. We have guests on the show, try to see what they can bring to the table, and then we also do a lot of different stuff. But today's one of those special episodes where we hash it out. Talon's favorite episode, or type of episode, should I say. And today we're going to hash out recovery. This is like recovering from training, recovering from your workouts, because this is something we did after our bike race. And if you didn't listen to our 100-mile bike race episode, you can go back a podcast or two and listen to it. And today we're going to be covering all sorts of topics. So we're going to be covering using a device like the Mark Pro, something that's going to stimulate your muscles toward better recovery. We're going to talk about some earthy style recoveries using, oils or turmeric specifically, some spices that you could use that will accelerate your recovery. And then we're also going to talk about a very interesting topic that I've been doing a lot of research on lately, which is hyperthermic conditioning, which is super cool and also kind of what we did in the 100-mile bike race. So we have a lot of ground to cover, but I'm excited to do it because I'm starting to enjoy these hash it outs, Talon. They're pretty fun.
Yeah, it's fun to just talk about like important topics. I think recovery is definitely one of those. I mean, when we push ourselves to do these really tough events, or as far as we can get, you really need to focus on how you can get your body back to, functioning capacity, right? So, I think this is a really important topic for us to hit on today.
Yeah, and if you're like 20 years old and you could go out and drink all night and then like hit the gym up in the next morning, no problem, you might not know what we're talking about yet, but you will. I do think that recovery gets more and more important the older you get, something that people should build habits on early on so it's not as big of a deal. You don't have to grunt and groan every time you get out of a chair, but definitely important. But so what was this? Like a few weeks ago, we did the bike race, right?
Right.
And I brought along with us the Mark Pro. If you've never checked out, if you don't know what a Mark Pro is, it is just an electrical muscle stimulation machine, and it's a cool little thing. I'm sure you've seen one on TV or something similar, like a TENS unit that you can strap to your body, and then you can turn it on, and it's basically sending signals through your muscles, and it causes your muscles to activate. And, that has a lot of benefits, but the way we used it, and we'll get into that in a minute, but the way we used it was after the bike race, we did our bike race, and then we had to drive 2 hours back to my house same day. We didn't have to, but we wanted to. And so what we did was he got one side of the charge, I got the other side, and then we both did like our left leg, and then we both did our right leg, and we put it on there for a long time. I think we did like 30 or 40 minutes per leg.
We did.
And the reason we wanted to bring it up today is because of how awesome we think it actually worked, right?
Yeah, it really was amazing.
How was your recovery post bike race? This is one of the things that we did, and we'll get to some other topics, but how do you think the Mark Pro is helping you when you the days following the bike race?
I think it had to have a huge impact. I don't have that many things to compare it to other than maybe like the No Train Marathon, really, that in the amount of, soreness and the length of time it took for me to recover from that as a for the bike race. So that's kind of how I'm comparing it. And really there is no comparison. It was just like, it took me days and days and days to recover, where I almost couldn't even walk the next day after the No Train Marathon. Whereas the bike race, I almost, using these recovery concepts we're going to talk about, I don't think I really had any soreness. I mean, I don't remember ever having problems getting out of bed or, getting already back into my workout routine the very next day. So, For me, it was really impressive. What these techniques, especially the Mark Pro, did for me.
Yeah, and I have very similar experience. I did the marathon thing as well, and I was really jacked up for a while. Like, I got back to normal walking and everything, but I still wouldn't lift any heavy weights for probably a week, 2 weeks after, just because my knees were still jacked up. But after this bike race, I was pretty much back to normal. I mean, I really didn't feel that sore the next day, and I attribute that a lot to the Mark Pro, despite not having a control and an experiment to compare it to. But I just was unusually recovered, and so that's why we're going to talk about it. But let me read a little bit about what the Mark Pro. So the basis for post-exercise recovery is the normalization of tissue through movement of nourishment and waste. So the process begins with the activation of nitric oxide, which dilates blood vessels and leads to increased flow, delivering more oxygenated blood and nutrients to the area. The lymphatic and venous systems also require and benefit from localized muscle activity. Because of this, using the Mark Pro after physical activity helps move the related waste and deoxygenated blood away from the fatigued areas. This exchange of nourishment and waste without stress or fatigue accelerates the recovery of the muscle. So
accelerates the recovery of the muscle.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty cool little device. I mean, another thing that they have studies, published research studies that say that it can even lead to what angiogenesis, I believe, is how you say it, but that's basically new blood vessels growing in certain regions. And in the study, it was legs. So just moving more blood in and out of the what the fatigued area is going to give it obviously more nourishment and remove more waste. So makes sense, right? It's like a like a pump. Your heart just being able to move more blood there because the muscles are constantly moving.
But it's funny you say like a pump, because if you haven't used one of these things before, it's going to be a little bit scary. So for
Talon
me,
was terrified of this.
well, it's like a dial, so you can turn it up, intensity, higher intensity, lower intensity, whatever you want, right? And these are it's electric coming through your muscles. So for somebody who hasn't used it before, it's really scary because it's jolting your muscle in a very almost violent manner. And so when I saw yours, you were I think jacked up all the way to the highest setting you could, and I was like easing mine in a little bit, just like ooh, I'm feeling a little shock here and there because I hadn't used them before.
Right.
So yeah, I was a little nervous at first, but with time, I was able to realize that it's not killing you, it's not hurting you. It's a little awkward to see your muscles moving without you, being the one to manipulate them. But and the shock takes a little bit to get over at first, but honestly, it ends up being that much. It feels good after a while. It feels like it's almost recharging your muscles and replenishing them.
And I think it's great if the listeners, if you guys want to try Mark Pro out, they're pretty expensive, but go ahead and if you are interested in it, you could try and get one out. Get one, but the other option is a contrast shower. It's not going to be near as effective as a Mark Pro. Just simply, it's not electrical muscle stimulation,
right.
But it's a similar effect. So. That would be the two big things that you can do, but there are a lot of other stuff you can do for recovery, and you can get more into the, like what I'm calling earthy recovery, and that's something Talon did I actually didn't know about until we talked later. So you got into a little hippie oil, and I say that with love because I'm a big fan of the oils for a lot of different stuff, but I want to know what you did specifically.
Well, my wife's into the essential oils gig, and we had someone on the show respond to that survey we put out a while back saying that they're interested in essential oils, and so ever since then we've been kind of experimenting with them a little bit, and maybe we'll do a show about it later. But yeah, I mean she knew that I was coming back from an untrained 75-mile bike race, and she wanted to take care of me, right? So she put the essential oils, more specifically eucalyptus oil, to the test, and and she basically gave me a massage with it. And so eucalyptus oil relieves muscle and joint pain as well as relieving stress in your muscles. And for me, I felt like this just helped, that entire process. I mean, it really just it soothes the pain. Whereas, the Mark Pro is recovering your muscles. This is more recovering, getting over the pain part. If you have pain in your joints or your muscles, it's bothering you, eucalyptus oil is a good way to get rid of that, because the volatile eucalyptus oil is an anti-inflammatory in nature. So it helps do that just by its own process.
Sounds pretty cool. And I wasn't a huge oil guy. Like I just was I was a huge skeptic of the oils, and I think I hurt myself, muscle pain, and my wife's into the oils as well, but she made some little concoction, and I was in like a lot of pain. Like I came out from training outside, and I think it was my hamstring, and I was like rolling around in pain because the muscle kept tightening, and then like it wouldn't let go, and she made some little concoction, and it, whether it's mental or not, like I talk about that all the time on this show. It doesn't matter.
Placebo.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's the placebo effect, because I was no longer in pain, so I don't care if my brain tricked itself.
It's prescribed to patients often who have like rheumatism or lumbago or sprained ligaments or tendons, or just stiff muscles, because that's it helps fix that pain problem and those issues in your muscles and joints. So,
and a lot of the points here that you're going to see in recovery, what we're talking about is this anti-inflammatory or antioxidant principles, right? That's kind of that's a lot of the theory behind most recovery, other than actually, digging your muscles out, which is something I did after the bike race. So I'm a huge fan of Kelly Starrett. You can check him out at mobilitywod.com because he has a ton of great stuff on YouTube and everything on just how to basically take care of yourself and how to gain more mobility. And a thing he talks about for if you're going to be doing like hill runs or even like a bike ride like what we did, there's a lot of simple stuff that you can do. If you're not into the oils, or if you don't want to buy a Mark Pro, a lacrosse ball. I mean, they're relatively cheap, and it's something that you can use on a daily basis. I actually showed my dad a few tricks with a lacrosse ball, and he travels with it now constantly. But like for the bike ride, so what I did when I got back was I was just trying to hit my quads up, the head of the quad, the hip flexor, like all of those muscles that are in the hip, trying to get those loosened up and all that stuff. And then another big one I did was the couch stretch, which if you've ever done is basically just putting your knee down and getting as vertical as you can from chest all the way down to quad, and your knee bent back up into the couch. And if that doesn't make sense, you can research couch stretch. But that's kind of like some DIY recovery. But like I said, a lot of this stuff is based around, if you're ingesting anything, is going to be based around anti-inflammatory and antioxidant principles, which another one that we could talk about is a new one that we're kind of researching right now that we're thinking about putting to the test, right?
Oh, yeah. Turmeric.
My favorite.
Yeah. You're asking what it does, what it's like?
What does it do?
Yeah, well, over time, an athlete on a nutritional regimen high in antioxidants and anti-inflammatories, like we were just talking about, such as turmeric, they'll in turn be able to train harder if they're taking turmeric and more effectively and more efficiently in a given time period, while simultaneously taking out an insurance policy basically against the primary culprits that often, prevent conscientious athletes, like fatigue or overtraining or illness. So it sounds like a really interesting thing for us to put to the test, for better humanology. Yeah,
it's something I've done some research on, but I haven't tried out. I wanted to, maybe even challenge the listeners to maybe start trying it too, because I know that something I want to start adding. It's super easy. You could buy this stuff from the store and mix it in with tea or water or whatever, and then ingest it. It's really simple to take, and it has so many health benefits, because we're obviously talking about it in kind of a strength and conditioning sense, but there's a lot of stuff from cancer to everything else that can be taken care of, from reducing inflammation. So turmeric, something definitely you want to check out. Mix it in with some water and drank it up.
Yeah, I mean, if it's going to be a cheap fix for a lot of these things, I mean, we love the Mark Pro. The Mark Pro is great, but I mean, not everybody's going to dish out a couple $100 for their recovery. So if we can find things like, you know, the crossbar or turmeric or these cheaper options that anybody can really have access to, that helps them recover and really perform at their highest peak level as soon as possible, basically. So that's why we want to recover, right? Because we want to get back to be able to perform at that highest peak as soon as possible. So, I mean, I think the more options that we have out there, the more things that you try that work for you to help you recover, the better.
I 100% agree, my man. All right, and speaking of training, this is kind of the last point we want to cover. So far we went over some really quick stuff that you could do. So basically, if you got the money, go buy a Mark Pro because it's probably worth it, right? That's
Ooh.
A. B, rub some essential oils on you, specifically eucalyptus. Maybe makes you a better human and can relieve some muscle pain. And then
if you can, have somebody else rub it on for you, because man, I'll tell you,
yeah,
that helps the recovery probably a little bit as well.
Hey, maybe that's part of the secret right there.
We got to do massages for Better Humanology as a show.
Like on each other?
No. My man, no, sir.
I call first. No, okay. All right. So we talked about some oils and then turmeric,
right,
which is the new one. Disclaimer, like Talon and I, we haven't really tried it too much. We just did some research on it. Think it's really cool. But it's not just like, you know, straight research. I know a lot of athletes who are using it. I've heard it mentioned a lot in some of the circles that I'm in. I've just never actually, you know, pursued it that much, and it's something I want to start trying out now. So that moves into something really cool I want to talk about, and that is hyperthermic conditioning. So it's
fun to learn about.
I'm not the expert on this. The person I know who knows a lot about this stuff is Dr. Rhonda Patrick, and she has her own podcast, and she's more or less a genius. Seriously, but she talks about this. She has more than one occasion. And for me, this is something like, I think the more you train, the more you do anything, any field of study, like whatever you're into, I think that you will start to naturally learn things that, I don't know, it becomes like intuitive for you, but then science just kind of backs you up one day. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, you might...
The smarter you become on something, yep.
And you don't even know that you're doing, like, you don't know what you're doing, or specifically you don't know what you're doing, but you might be like, oh, no, when I do this, it's specifically in this case, like when I train outside, you know, for weeks on end, I feel like I'm getting better as opposed to training in an air-conditioned environment. And that's kind of what hyperthermic training is. There's so many benefits to it. So you can do it by just sitting in a sauna or whatever. I don't like that option as much as just if you live in the right climate, and I know Talon and I do, and that's just straight up training outside. And I know we have trained in some pretty brutal days here in Texas.
The hotter than hell was one of those. Yeah,
and that's part of what led to this. So in Florida, when I lived in Florida before I moved to Texas, that's when I started training outside. Like, I always trained in my garage, so it was hot or whatever, but I started training like just straight up outside because the facilities that I trained with were outside. I started moving my stuff out of the garage to outside. I kind of fell in love with it, and so when I moved back to Texas, I started training outside. And I know you're a big advocate of training outside, right?
I am. Huge. I mean, I don't want to get too into it, but I feel like when I was reading about this stuff, I was like, wow, like it was like what you're talking about. I was like validating all the thoughts that I had that I didn't really know. I didn't have research backed. I just always believed that. I always liked training out at the hottest time of the day and outside, and I always believed that it was more beneficial to train at the hottest time of the day. But now, in learning about hyperthermic conditioning, I really feel like wow, I've been doing myself a huge service by making sure I've been training at the hottest times as possible.
Yeah, and there's one study I do want to quote. There's like they did a 30-minute sauna session 2 times a week, and there are other studies where they actually did more, and it actually improved mortality rate and all this other stuff. But we're talking fitness here in this case, and they did it for 3 weeks after they worked out, and it increased the time it took for study participants to run until exhaustion by 32% compared to the baseline.
Woo!
And so, like,
That's a lot.
It just helps a ton, you know, and you're like, okay, cool, I start training outside, and things you'll notice when you start training outside is you don't get as uncomfortable as other people do. And that's something I started to notice a lot lately because, I mean, right towards the end of August is when Texas just was like kind of kicking your ass. It's like it's not going to let go of summer. It's just really cranked up the heat, and that's also when you kind of feel like, man, it's going to be summer forever in this state. Anyway, that's when people start bitching the most is what I'm trying to get to. You know, people you're hanging
People
around
don't want to
with-
get out in the heat. They,
Yeah.
they want to stay in their air conditioning and work out there. But
Yeah.
what they don't realize is they're really, like we talked about, they're doing a disservice to themselves, right?
Yeah, and that's part of the thing, but I wasn't like, I know I talk about mental toughness all the time, but I don't stand out in the heat and like, for mental toughness. You know, I just started to notice, I was like I'm not hot. Like, I feel fine, you know, like I'm more acclimated to another person who's in the same environment. And the only reason I'm more acclimated is because I train in the heat. And after I started kind of peel this onion, if you will, there's a lot of stuff going on when you train outside, inside your body that, you know, people don't talk about or people don't know about. And I'm going to have to talk about heat shock proteins, which makes me sound really smart, but it really doesn't at all after I try and explain them. So a heat shock protein is basically helps eliminate, and I'm not going to read anything here. I'm just going to give it to you in my layman's terms, understanding of heat shock proteins. So when proteins aggregate, that's a bad thing, and it can lead to all sorts of diseases like Alzheimer's, and it's generally brain, you know, like neurodegenerative diseases that it could lead to, and heat shock proteins can help mitigate that. So it can help a lot in that department, which is cool, you know. So we're talking about just being acclimated to something, but if they prevent free radicals in your body, which is also something like antioxidants do, then you're just going to be healthier, right? You're going to recover faster. You're going to be able to become a better human, if you will. And so, I don't know, training in the heat, I think it's something that you should try out. You can do a lot more research on this if you want to. This is something I wanted to introduce because something Talon and I did in the bike race, but we also both do on a daily and weekly basis, and that's train in some really freaking hot weather. And it helps a ton.
Yeah, I mean, I probably can't tell you all the benefits because I've been doing it unconsciously the entire time. I've been training in the hot because I always just I was getting a better sweat. I mean, all these layman's reasons for why I was training out, you know, at the hottest time of the day. I just had no idea that I was really getting all these kinds of benefits. I mean, geez, if I'm helping stave off Alzheimer's just because I'm running at the hottest time of the day, then, you know, maybe it's a very slight, small amount, but whatever. I mean, that's a positive that I didn't even know that was happening.
Well, apparently, you know, another cool thing is when sweating is good for you, and I know people also avoid that. So people don't want to work out in the heat, and they also don't want to sweat. Like,
right.
I know some people who, I won't name any names, if they could not sweat from start to finish of a workout but still do a workout, they would be perfectly happy. And that's just not
unhealthy.
Good, right? Because sweating, you can actually sweat out like really terrible chemicals or
toxins in your body
and metals and all sorts of different stuff that stuff that your liver can most of the time catch, but you know, sweating is just another way to kind of to have a filter. But
yeah,
that's pretty much it for hyperthermic training. So what can you do? Train in the heat, embrace it, become a better human, and
and recover faster, guys. Try some of these concepts out because we want to help you get back up on your feet and get back to optimum, you know, capacity as fast as possible. So, because we're always pushing to try and be a better human, right?
That's right. All right, guys. Until next time.
Thanks, guys.
your best. Losers always whine about their best.